Hi, I'm Natasha Frakes, and you're watching Market 1 Minute. Joining us is Brady Fletcher, Managing Director and Head of the TSX Venture Exchange. Brady, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Natasha.
So we keep on hearing about cryptocurrencies and initial coin offerings. So what does that mean for your business?
I think it's really interesting, and we're in an interesting time. The reality is that globally, equity capital markets, the NYSEs, the NASDAQs, the AIMs, the TSX, the TSX Venture, represent $72 trillion of capital. And so the world's largest technology companies trade in those pools of capital. But what we're starting to see is companies that are listed with us look at this new financing model as a way to potentially fund the future production of their mine or to fund future technology development or consumer products. And I think that's a really interesting way that companies can look at leveraging their balance sheet to finance through this new system.
So both new listing and financing activity on venture have been strong for the first half of this year. Yeah. What about the TSX?
The TSX has been a little bit challenged, admittedly. There's been a lot of uncertainty in the Canadian energy sector. But when we look at what's been going on, we've got 6 new IPOs that have come to the TSX, the likes of Ceridian out of the US, IPL out of Ireland. Those are global companies that are recognizing the power of the TSX and our two-tiered ecosystem here. And we're attracting those companies here to list with us.
In the past, we've talked about the Venture Exchange as a capital formation platform. So are international companies taking interest in the public venture capital?
That's really where we're starting to see the growth from the venture business, is when we look to international companies and they're looking at how do you grow a business? How do you find that next round of capital? How do you have a share currency to make acquisitions and scale your business more quickly? And those entrepreneurs, and especially serial entrepreneurs, are looking to the Venture Exchange as a platform to do that, to be able to raise money, to have that publicly quoted share currency for growing, and ultimately, as they execute on their business plan and build credibility in the capital markets, generate liquidity for their shareholders.
Let's talk about some of the most successful companies in the Venture 50 Awards. How did that go this year?
This was a really exciting year for us with the Venture 50. For the first time in anyone's recollection, it was the most uniform performance we've had across all five buckets of companies. And so the Venture 50, we take 10 companies from the energy sector, 10 from the mining side, 10 from the clean tech and life sciences side, 10 from diversified, and 10 from technology. And we choose them based on their share price appreciation, their market cap appreciation, and their liquidity. So when you look at that ranking of companies, typically it's been weighted to one specific sector. But this year, all 5 of those groupings performed relatively uniformly, which for us shows that this market's really healthy. We're seeing the growth across the entire market.
Right. So when you're trying to attract new companies that would normally be private, how do you deal with the perceived additional overhead of becoming a public company?
One of the things I think is really important to think about is if you're raising money and you're trying to build your business by raising money, you're going to take on shareholders and additional reporting, and effectively, you take on a new boss when you take on a shareholder. And the nice thing about taking on public shareholders is that you have this mechanism of the stock exchange underneath that allows you to rotate those shareholders when they decide it's time for them to exit. In the private company land, as soon as you take that dollar from a private shareholder, you have to return that dollar to them at some point, either via IPO or via M&A. And so when you think about, what's it like being private versus public, it's really that question of, do you want to have the permanence of public venture capital, or do you want to borrow private venture capital and have to return those dollars to somebody? The burden is a trade-off that, yes, there's a little bit of extra reporting, and yes, you have to engage with your public shareholders a little bit more regularly. But I think that burden and that overhead is outweighed by the benefits and the access to capital that comes with public venture capital.
Right, that makes sense.
Thanks.
So are you trying to attract more U.S. companies now because you're doing a bunch of U.S. roadshows?
We are. We hit 5 cities every year with our U.S. roadshow. And this year we actually have 2 people now in Northern and Southern California. And so we're doing Austin, we did Northern California, Southern California, Seattle, and New York this year for our 5-city tour.
So why would U.S. companies choose to list here?
It's a great question. And I think a big part of it is that traditionally people have looked to the U.S. venture capital model as a way that they would finance the growth of a company. But when you think about venture capital, what happens is you're borrowing money from that investor. When you think about going and accessing public venture capital by listing on the Venture Exchange, you take that money in and you get to put that money to work. And when that shareholder decides it's time for them to exit, they can rotate through the auspices of the exchange itself. And that really, it enables a permanence of public venture capital, that the management team gets to take that money in and really deploy it towards building their business and building their business for the long term. So that's what we're starting to see, is that when we talk to US companies and entrepreneurs in the US that want to build for the long term, then they're looking at us as a platform to do that.
So for those that are looking for more information, where can they find more info about the Venture Exchange?
The best way to find more information about us is to go to tmx.com and look at the TMX website. Then we do have offices in Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal, so please come on in and see us.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, Brady.
Thanks for having me, Natasha.